I need to interact with the audience, and for that, I would like to ask you to put the camera towards the audience so that I can see them. Yes. Okay.
Slowly, but it will be.
Yes, very good, very good. That's all very good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Weiss, as you have heard. Unfortunately, I could not make it to the conference personally. I was already on the way to the airport when some unforeseeable events happened, so I had to stay at home. I'm really sorry for that. I hope that it works out next year because I would have loved to do this workshop together with you in person. But thankfully, we have, or happily, we have digital solutions. So I will try my best to do this workshop online in a hybrid way with you. I hope this is fine for you. So as you have heard, I'm on the advisory board of the Trilogos Foundation. I'm also a certified trainer and teacher in this methodology. And to make a long story short, what I would like to do now with you in the next 1.5 hours is to do a first exercise from the Trilogos method so that you can not only learn and hear about this methodology for personality development and consciousness development, but that you also can experience it. In order to do so, I have to first do some formal duties, which is, here you can see the title of the workshop, the Trilogos method in practice. As I've mentioned, it's a method for personality training and consciousness development. And here is my conflict of interest form, which says basically that I have nothing to disclose. So I hope that with that, I have done all the formalities necessary in order to start with the workshop. Okay, the Trilogos method is based on what is called guided imagery. And maybe some of you have heard about guided imagery or even done one before. Could you raise your hands if you have done a guided imagery before? No one. Yes, there is one hand up, I think. Well, this is no problem because in short terms, guided imagery is a form of guided meditation. And some steps of this guided imageries are quite similar to what is called autogenic training. And maybe some of you have done autogenic training before or even practices meditation regularly. Guided imageries was originally developed by the psychiatrist Hans Carl Leuner. And by today, there are many different forms. Among them is the Trilogos method. And what I would like to do now, before we start with the exercise, is to go through the different steps of this exercise so that you know a bit in advance what you can expect. In this guided meditation now, we will first relax our physical body and then also our emotions and our thoughts. After that step of relaxation, you will be invited to make your prayer, your ritual with God, Allah, Atman, the Great Void, or whatever you call it, depending on your faith and denomination. Of course, also atheists can perform this step, for example, by consciously connecting with the great nothingness, with nature, eternal life, and so on. The purpose of this quite spiritual step is that you can deepen your relaxation and your basic trust, as it is called. And in order to do so, we will also welcome a spiritual helper, symbolically a good force that accompanies you and guides you throughout the whole exercise. Some would also call this spiritual helper the higher self or the human potential. And some might perceive the spiritual helper as a man, as a woman, as a power animal, sphere of light, whatever comes to your mind is all right as long as you feel fine with your spiritual helper. Because if you don't do, you can always ask for another one during the imagery. And together with the spiritual helper, you will go on a little journey through the world of your imagination. And on that journey, you might find a gift. And at the end of this exercise, in the so-called exchange group, in a dialogue, the question, what can this gift have to do with you and your everyday life? This question will be at the center in the exchange group after the exercise. However, if you're not up for finding any gifts during this exercise, if you just want to relax, then also this is possible. I will mention that explicitly during the exercise so that you can decide whether you just want to relax or whether you want to work together with your spiritual helper. At the end, we will come back to the here and now together anyway. So the exercise will take about 25 minutes, so just that you are a bit prepared for that. And since the Trilogos method is a method for personality training and consciousness development, the purpose of this exercise is to develop ideas for personal growth on the one hand. On the other hand, the purpose is also to rediscover and train your intuition. And as you probably have already realized, this methodology harnesses and fosters not only rational, analytical, and emotional capabilities, but also spiritual ones. That's why it's called Trilogos, three forms of intelligence, so to speak. And for that, the Trilogos method also uses the formula IQ plus EQ plus SQ equals PsyQ, the human potential, which means this methodology is about combining rational capabilities, emotional capabilities, and spiritual potentials. In that sense, it also stands in the tradition of the so-called human potential movement that some of you for sure know. However, before we get into theoretical discussions, now let us put aside our expert knowledge for a moment and just enjoy the experience of the exercise now. And before we start, I have to ask you, and I want to ask you whether you have any questions about the content of the exercise before we start. No? Ah, yes, there is one question.
Regret, eu nu vorbesc engleză, dar aș vrea să știu care sunt contraindicațiile metodei.
I will translate it. There are some contraindications of this method.
There are some indications of this method. What?
Side effects, possible side effects when it's forbidden to use this method.
Ah, okay, yes. That's very easy to explain. If you feel fine, it should work out fine too. So, but if you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, I don't suggest you to do this exercise. Especially when you work with patients, for example, then I would not advise for anyone this kind of methodology. It's always depending on the diagnosis. For now, I can only say to keep things simple. If you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, then just open your eyes during the exercise. You can always open your eyes and stop participating in the exercise. That's always possible, just that you know. But there aren't any side effects in that sense that whenever you perform this exercise, then there are side effects. It should be a nice relaxation and a nice experience. This is the intention of it. But as mentioned, if you feel uncomfortable, you can always stop the exercise and always open your eyes. Okay. Any other questions? No?
No.
That's good. Then I would like to make yourself comfortable on your chair. Loosen any belts or buttons that can constrain you. Make sure that your mobile phones are switched off or at least in silent mode. And after you have done all this, a soothing silence begins to evolve in you. And in order to start to enjoy this silence even more, you can close your eyes now in the awareness that you can always open them during the exercise if you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. And with your closed eyes, take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Then take another breath and breathe out again. More and more you are paying attention to your breathing. And in the soothing rhythm of your breathing, you can feel that you're getting quieter and that it's getting quieter inside you and around you. You are less preoccupied by the sounds around you. Only my voice is your constant companion on this journey. And I thank you for your trust to continue following my voice for a moment. Your entire body can now allow itself to relax. You can feel the firm contact you have with the ground through the soles of your feet, and how this gives you a sense of security. And then this sense of security can spread throughout your entire body. The muscles of your lower legs and thighs, they are relaxing more and more. And with every breath, you let your pelvis, your spine, and your head relax more and more. All your organs function reliably and on their own. Your arms are hanging loosely from your shoulders. And feel how they may be lying on your lap or legs. And feel how that sensation is spreading to your fingertips. Even your hands are now completely relaxed. And you can feel how a comforting, relaxing feeling gradually sets into your entire body, from head to toe. And if you're still experiencing tensions or even physical blockages in your body, then these too may begin to relax and loosen up. Through your breathing, your body is constantly supplied with soothing, invigorating energies. And as your body is sitting on the chair, safe and sound, it nearly drifts off to sleep, but your mind is clear and wide awake. And you are then more and more attentive to yourself as you immerse yourself in a calming stillness. And by immersing yourself gently into this inner tranquility, your emotional world calms down more and more. Everything emotional, which may still be stirred up like sand in water, is now slowly sinking to the ground again. Even your thoughts can come to rest. And in a state of repose, peace of mind can set in. Your body, soul, and spirit are becoming more and more in tune. Symbolically, you imagine a blue curtain that you close now. And by drawing it from left to right, You can put everything behind that curtain that you don't need at the moment. It will stay there for you to be picked up at a later point in time, should you wish to do so. And after you close the blue curtain, you can experience yourself again in the midst of your inner self, in harmony with yourself, and in tune with the silence in and around you. Now practice your religio. Do your prayer, your ritual with God, Allah, Atman, or whatever you call it. Connect in your personal way with the creative power, the Supreme Being, or however you may call that. And feel and know yourself protected, guided, and safe in and through this eternal bond. Enjoy this all-encompassing unity, this state of feeling, knowing, and experiencing yourself to be connected and in harmony with the Supreme Being, and therefore with yourself. Divine love and light can now flow through all your layers of consciousness and permeate you. And in and through this bond, you may recharge, relax, and find the deep tranquility and inner peace. And as you enjoy this deep communion with the Supreme Being, you perceive a positive force. Symbolically, your spiritual helper coming toward you in unconditional love. Even if you cannot see him or her, you may feel his or her presence, or simply know that he or she is there. And in deep faith and trust in the presence of this good force, you give it a warm welcome. And you remember, should you feel uncomfortable with your spiritual helper for whatever reason, you can always ask for someone else at any time. And in the loyal and mindful accompaniment of your spiritual helper, your inner senses are now awakening to life again. And in your imagination, you awake in the midst of a wonderful prairie, that is, a wide, beautiful meadow. A great expanse opens up before you. The morning sun is shining, while the small drops of morning dew are still on the grass. It becomes easier and easier for you to tune your inner senses to the landscape around you. The vegetation is glowing in soft, luscious green tones, and the plants smell soothingly here. It is pleasantly warm and humid, and the first gentle rays of the sun shine on your skin. The wind blows gently and light. It brushes over the ground of the prairie with a soft, nearly imperceptible swoosh. And apart from that, an almost sacred silence and tranquility prevails in this landscape. And now, as you look across the prairie, across this meadow, you see a big rock in front of you. A rock that is almost as big as a table. As you approach it, you realize that it is completely smooth, without any edges or fissures. Over millennia, wind and weather have honed it smooth and round. The stone is also completely dry, having been warmed by the morning sun. You take a seat on this stone, and as you sit there, the relaxing tranquility and power of this landscape seeps into you and is transferred to you. You're thus able to enjoy the peaceful ambience in communion with the Supreme Being and in support of your spiritual helper. And as you sit there on this rock, the spiritual helper offers you a soft blanket that will make you even more comfortable on this beautiful stone. And now your helper also explains that he has come in order to work with you. However, if you're not up for mental work now and instead just want to continue to relax and enjoy the pleasant silence here, then you can do also this. You decide intuitively. And if you decided to stay and continue to enjoy the landscape, you now become aware again of your communion with the Supreme Being, which gives way to a harmonious sentiment inside you. And your spiritual helper is happy to be by your side during this experience. However, if you decided to work with your spiritual helper, then look to where his finger is pointing to at the horizon. And as you do, you can make out the mountain range in the distance. For some reason, you hadn't noticed it before. What is it that comes to your mind now? What is becoming more and more noticeable for you at the horizon? What contours are taking shape? And does the mountain range seem large or rather small? Is it more like a hill or a dune? Is it overgrown with trees or other plants? Or is it barren? What shapes does it have? Maybe you even recognize what stone it is made of, like sandstone, lime, granite, or maybe even marble. And more, the mountain range is becoming perceptible for you. Your spiritual helper now says that the mountain is symbolic for a particular area or theme in your life. And as he's telling you this, the mountain range begins to transform. For example, flowers may be growing and blossoming in areas that were very dry and sandy before. Or a cliff may break open at a certain spot, giving way to a cave or disclosing a wall filled with radiant crystals. Perhaps chips of rock are slowly rumbling down from the upper slopes, only to form a completely new rock formation in the place where they stop to roll and heap up. You, who are at a safe and far distance to the mountain, are now increasingly able to perceive this spectacle. It is becoming easier for you to tune your inner senses to it. And your helper has also brought a pair of binoculars to make it even easier for you to perceive everything from your spot. Take your time to sense what's happening at the mountain range. And if you have any questions about the transformation of the mountain or the meaning it has for you personally, your spiritual helper is there to answer all of your questions. Trust and believe that the right thing will come to your way now. You've obtained important and valuable information about the mountain range and its transformation. And if there is anything that is still unclear to you, or should you have any further questions, your helper will gladly assist you. Slowly but surely, the time has come to say goodbye to your spiritual helper. You get up from the stone you're sitting on, even if you've been relaxing on the stone all this time. Your spiritual helper now gives you his divine blessing, which will protect you in everyday life as well. Express your sincere thanks to him or her for his help or her help and inspiration. And after that, he or she returns to his or her world, and you return to the world of your everyday life too. For that, you let go of everything you've perceived now, having automatically made a note of the essence and most important aspects of your experience on your spiritual notepad. You now close and protect yourself again, carefully and independently. You close the doors and gates to the spiritual world behind you, so that a pleasant darkness surrounds you now. And in this pleasant darkness, you remember the blue curtain again. Now you open it again from right to left. And as you draw it open, you remember also your physical body again. You spread your fingers, and then you make a fist. You do the same with your toes. More and more life energy comes to your physical body again. You tense the muscles of your lower legs and thighs, as well as your lower and upper arms for a moment. Then you relax them again. If you want, you can also move your neck and stretch it. Take a few deep breaths, and then you open your eyes again and arrive well back into the here and now. I hope that everyone is well back in the here and now, that nobody is left behind in the prairie. I hope that you enjoyed this short exercise. Before we go into the exchange, I would like to give you the possibility to note down your experience in a few keywords with the focus on the mountain range that transformed. You can write it down on your laptop, your mobile phone, on a piece of paper, whatever. Just make a few notes with the focus on the mountain range that transformed. After the whole workshop, of course, you can write down the full experience, but for the moment, just focus on the mountain range, and there can be ideas from other participants during the workshop too that you want to note down later. But now just take a moment to write down what you experienced with the mountain range. I see that some of you are still writing and noting what you experienced. I would like to ask you to just stop from writing down for the moment. You can continue with that, of course, afterwards. Because now I would like to go into the exchange. First, I would go through the first step of the exercise and just asking generally how you experienced that. And nobody should feel forced to share his or her experience. Of course, this is voluntary, but if you want, you're always invited to do so. And I would like to start with the first step or the first two steps of the exercise, which was the physical relaxation and the relaxation of your feelings and your thoughts. I would like to ask you, were there any challenges there, or was it just fine for you? Are there any impressions from your side or any questions? I know that it's not too easy to do such an exercise in this hybrid form, but were there any questions, or was it just fine for everyone? No questions? It seems that it worked for everyone. Then I would like to go over to the next step, where you did what is called your religio, that is your prayer, your ritual with God, Allah, Atman, the great void, or whatever you call it. My question simply is, could everyone make this step? Was it hard for someone? I also mentioned before the exercise that also atheists can make this step. Is there anyone who wants to share what you experienced there and how that was for you? Whether it was challenging, disturbing, beautiful? Yes, I can't. If there was a statement now, I couldn't hear it.
Oh, I'm going to talk a little bit. Everybody,
Yes.
I guess, are shy or something. For the first question, I had a problem with my belt. So you actually said that you should be more free in being dressed, more free, and I couldn't took up my belt in the middle of the room. Yeah.
Okay. If I understand.
The second one,
Mhm.
the second one was I don't really like believe in God and stuff like that. Not very religious. So I was trying to fantasize who is that image, who's that person that I can put at the level of the God, let's say like that. And I had some ideas like a samurai or something, somebody that can control himself very well and go through his pathway in his life.
I can only say that this is all good. And first of all, guided imagery is like training for a marathon. If you do regular training, it gets easier and easier. And I think that it also, this religio, this step of the exercise, the more you practice it, the easier it gets for you, that you get a natural image for that, or natural impression for that. So you have to figure out a bit what works for you and what doesn't work so much. In order to make a long story short, I can only say that the purpose of this step is simply to deepen the relaxation and your trust. And if you have an image or an impression that works for exactly that, it's fine. But not. I also have to say that do not skip this step, because it's the same in a metaphorical sense. It's the same when you go into when you climb a foreign mountain where you never were before. When you do that, you have a mountain guide with you. In a metaphorical sense, that's the spiritual helper. And you also have a rope with you. And that is the religio, so to speak, because you wouldn't do any free climbing on a foreign mountain, if you understand what I mean. So these two steps are essential. And as I also mentioned, when you do this kind of training regularly, you figure out what works for you, what kind of images work for you, what kind of practices work for you for this religio. And then it gets easier and easier. But I understand that it's a little bit of discovering, kind of figuring out what is it that works for you. But thank you very much for your statement. I think it's very important, and I can imagine that also others had similar experiences. Is there anyone else who wants to share about this step?
Mulțumesc. Din păcate nu pot să vorbesc în engleză, nu prea bine mă descurc, dar o să vorbesc în română. Mă cheamă Iuliana. Deci eu am mai avut așa tip de experiențe, așa tip de imagerie ghidată, așa ca exercițiu în psihoterapie. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult, a fost destul de benefică această experiență. Am o întrebare în legătură cu schimbările de imagine. Iată, eu când m-am concentrat, deci mi-a reușit să mă relaxez din punct de vedere fizic, emoțional. Am avut doar complicație în a alege imaginea perfectă. Parcă eram într-o imagine, după aia parcă mintea mea vroia să schimbe imaginea, adică să zic că am văzut în față un șez și o pădure, după aia vroiam să fiu în mijlocul pădurii și iată schimbarea asta de imagine. Întrebarea mea poate sună mai mult din punct de vedere tehnic, da? Deci din punct de vedere spiritual, eu undeva înțeleg că sunt careva mecanisme de apărare, să zic că vreau acolo și acolo, dacă am avut o experiență poate care mi-aduce aminte de ceva negativ, mintea mea și-a ales o altă imagine până a apărut piatra și iată când cu apariția pietrei acestea netede, parcă mi-am clarificat imaginea. Iată ceva de genul ăsta mă interesează, dacă este asta ceva legat de tehnică sau poate mintea mea își caută soluția mai potrivită sau locul mai potrivit unde poate să se relaxeze. Și în dependență de, adică eu am legătură cu Dumnezeu și cred în Dumnezeu și am văzut așa o imagine parcă a chipului lui Dumnezeu care ceva mi-a îndrumat, mi-a zâmbit, a fost alături. Vă mulțumesc.
Now someone has to translate for me, please.
So that is it working? We have live translation here, but probably it wasn't for you.
No, I couldn't hear it. But maybe Mihail, you could summarize.
You have to choose channels.
Okay.
Audio channels.
Yeah, I have it now. Yeah. I have it now in English. Yes.
Repetați?
Da. Măcar în esență. Deci, întrebarea mea...
Yes, I can hear it.
Da, yeah. Vă mulțumesc că mi-a reușit exercițiul. Am zis că am mai avut așa experiențe în contextul formării mele ca psihoterapeut, deci imagerie ghidată. Întrebarea mea este puțin de format tehnic, să zic că am avut un pic de problemă când îmi căutam imaginea perfectă. În sensul că am fost întâi într-un loc unde vedeam șesul și în față era pădurea și după aia parcă mintea mea căuta, nu era reușită imaginea, parcă mintea mea căuta o altă imagine și m-am aranjat în mijlocul pădurii unde erau copaci, soare, deci copaci la distanțe mai mari și mi-am refăcut imaginea când ați vorbit de piatră, da? Deci când m-am așezat pe piatră, iarăși am revenit la prima imagine. Întrebarea mea este, din punct de vedere tehnic, că este asta un mecanism de apărare sau mai multe mecanisme, că îmi caut eu în mintea mea imaginea perfectă unde aș fi putut să mă relaxez. Fiindcă dacă îmi dau seama, era o imagine din Italia, deci de la o vacanță în care nu a fost totul perfect acolo și poate în legătură cu experiența mea trecută am dorit să-mi schimb imaginea. Asta a fost întrebarea. Și în legătură cu Dumnezeu am zis că mi-a reușit să văd imaginea ceva în alb, o forță divină care mi-a zâmbit, care a fost alături. Nu am auzit să-mi spună ceva, dar doar mi-am imaginat așa plăcut o forță care este alături de mine și care poate să mă susțină atunci când va fi nevoie. Vă mulțumesc.
Thank you very much. I think you brought up two very important aspects here. Before I go into answering your questions, I would like to pose you one or two questions, if this is okay for you. My first question is, would you see yourself as a person who is very often striving towards the perfect, and which makes that you are not easily satisfied, that it can be that you have it actually good, but you want to be even better? Would you assume you to be that kind of person, that you are striving towards the...
Da, eu
Okay.
lupt și
Okay.
încerc să ating niveluri mai înalte, după cum îmi reușește.
Da.
Da, deci tendință spre perfecționism. Mulțumesc.
Yeah, thank you very much for your openness. And here I only can suggest, and you do with that what you want in a self-responsible way. But here, with that kind of exercise, you said it yourself. You got an image first. You were not happy because it was not perfect enough. But that's the difference with that exercise, that you're not so much invited to look actively for the perfect image or to create with your mind a better perfect situation, but that you can delve into what comes to your mind first. So when you have a nice situation that comes to your mind intuitively, like the first image that you had, then just be thankful for that and try to delve into that. And this is such a small practice that might help to go into this experience more and more, and not to think about, is that perfect enough or not. So that's just a suggestion. But for the other
Mie mi-a venit imaginea chiar care o cunosc, adică locul unde am fost în Italia. Adică imaginea care, din amintirea mea, mi-a venit imaginea, nu mi-a venit ceva din fanteziile mele. Și parcă vroiam să schimb locul acela, adică era loc din experiența mea. Mulțumesc.
Yeah, and that's all good, because I understand it perfectly well. And this is often the case when we imagine something, images from our past, from a memory come up, or that something that is similar to what we once experienced or saw. This is completely normal. So and that is no problem at all. To make it short, when an image comes to your mind, even though you're familiar with the image, try to be thankful for it, as long as it's not really something horrible or distracting. Be thankful for it, and if you have questions around why is it exactly this image, why is it exactly that landscape, ask your spiritual helper. Why am I here? Why do I get this image now? That's one thing. The other thing, and that relates to the spiritual helper, and that I say that for everyone, the spiritual helper can appear in different forms, as I said before the exercise, and that is completely normal. You might experience your spiritual helper as your deceased grandmother, as a sphere of light, as a power animal, whatever. You can let yourself be surprised. And as long as you feel fine and comfortable with the company of a spiritual helper, that's good. If you don't feel fine with him or her, ask for another one. But I think that what you described here with the spiritual helper was a very good example for how you can perceive such a helper. Even though the helper is not talking to you yet, you felt fine in the presence, and that is good. And it's with this spiritual helper, it's the same as with the rest of the imagery. It takes regular training, and I experienced it so many times when people said, my spiritual helper is not talking to me. And when you do further training, all of a sudden it starts to talk. It's a little bit the same when you get to know new people. There are some people who are shy and then it takes a while until they're warming up, so to speak. And that, in a metaphorical sense, can be the same with spiritual helper, that over time he or she is warming up and then really talking. Most important is just that you feel fine with him or her. Okay, I would like to go on to the next step where you, yeah, is there another question? No.
Nu întrebare, doar o specificare tehnică, cred că este important de luat în vedere, deși, mă rog, stilul ăsta de metodă nu este potrivit pentru mine, dar este important, probabil colegul nostru nu știe, traducătorul trebuie să fie același în timpul vizualizării. Că au fost schimbare de registre și nu doar de registre, adică nu doar vocea s-a schimbat, dar a fost și schimbare de sexe, care poate afecta foarte mult ecologic vizualizarea.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I'm sorry for that. And as you said, it can be that this is not for everyone, so to speak. But I hope that it was interesting and inspiring for most of you. And with that, I would like to go further on to another step, and that is you could decide whether you wanted just to relax on the rock or whether you wanted to further work. Was there anyone who just relaxed during the whole exercise? Hands up so that I can see whether there was someone not perceiving the transformation. Yeah, there's some hands up, and I only can say very well done, because you decided in a self-responsible way what was right for you. And in that sense, we can say you did the right thing. So the others, my question is, those who did not raise their hands now, who of you could perceive a mountain range that was then transforming? Hands up. Could anyone? Yes. Does any of you who could perceive a mountain range that was transforming then, does any one of you want to share your experience? What did you experience there? What was happening? Who wants to share his or her experience? It's of course voluntary, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but it would be very giving also for the others to see how this works. Yeah.
Da. Eu am perceput, deci când se desființa lanțul acesta, ușor cădeau, deci se alunecau petricele mici, un pic de praf, un pic de nisip, ceva de genul. A fost un pic de, la nivel emoțional, eu am simțit careva palpitații, careva schimbări ușoare, parcă îmi făceam griji să nu fie ceva mai amplu, mai mare de volum, da? Măcar că eu mă simțeam în siguranță, eram deoparte, vedeam clar că este, hai să zic, în viziunea mea la 50-100 de metri, poate mai mult, și un pic așa la nivel emoțional am simțit parcă că îmi făceam griji, parcă ceva la nivelul inimii, mici schimbări, așa, mici palpitații. Atât. N-a fost periculos, adică de perceput a fost ceva, doar o trăire emoțională ușoară, doar niște schimbări de emoții, ceva de genul. Adică n-a fost nimic perceput periculos. Cam asta, adică a rămas plăcută imaginea, maximal de plăcută, adică nu s-a schimbat foarte tare. Mulțumesc.
Thank you very much for that. I have to translation. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. I would like to invite the rest of you. Now you have heard there was this dismantlement of the mountain rocks rolling down slowly, dust coming up a bit. You also mentioned that you were emotionally a bit worried and hoping not that it would be too much change, but there was this kind of emotional change. I just want to pick out the dismantlement, the dust coming up, and the emotional change. You also mentioned that as a term. And when you all, the rest of you, are imagining this image, then what is it that comes to your mind first? This is a little bit like dream interpretation, and I would like to invite you to make free associations. Whatever comes to your mind first, share it so that the person that was just sharing her experience can get more ideas. What could it mean? How can we interpret that? And there's not only one right interpretation. There are as many interpretations of the truth as individuals, as we say in the Trilogos method. But what comes to your mind? I would like to invite all of you, help our colleague here to get different perspectives, ideas on what she experienced. So who wants to come up with an idea?
Mulțumesc mult, Michael, pentru acest atelier de lucru deosebit de important. Presupun că o să fie de mare folos pentru toți participanții care sunt de zi cu zi implicați în activitate și sunt cu multe probleme, cu un oarecare nivel de burnout. Și ținând cont de discursul care are loc acum, fiind un pic inițiat în acest domeniu, aș vrea să spun că este destul de dificil să lucrezi cu un grup și să nu ții cont de ritmul de lucru al fiecăruia, pentru că este foarte dificil să te conectezi când vorbești, fiind conectat cu limbajul corporal al fiecăruia și ținând cont de asta să încetinești sau să accelerezi discursul, văzând încotro merg lucrurile. Presupun că petrele care au început să se risipească sau muntele care au început să se desfacă în bucățele la Iuliana, colega mea, ar fi de interpretat ca muntele o mare problemă, deoarece imaginea din start din Italia, care i-a apărut, nu prea a satisfăcut-o, să vede că era ceva, un moment de stres în acea perioadă din Italia, poate asociat muntele fiind cu o problemă oarecare, care necesita soluționare. Și apoi, desfăcând această problemă în mici bucăți, în părți, ea poate fi mai ușor soluționată. Eu vă felicit, sunteți un psihoterapeut foarte bun, vă mulțumesc.
Thank you very much for this comment. You brought up a really interesting interpretation. I would like to ask our colleague who shared her experience, how can you reply and give feedback on that interpretation? I said there are as many interpretations of the truth as individuals, but does that make sense? A bigger problem that is broken down into smaller pieces, and then it gets easier to handle, even though you're worrying about something, but with smaller pieces or breaking it down into smaller pieces, it feels more emotionally handleable. How would you respond to that? Does that make sense? You can also say, no, this doesn't make sense at all because I don't have any big issues or problems.
Eu aș fi vrut să adaug un pic. Mulțumesc domnului Ion, colegul meu, într-adevăr a perceput, să zic, aproape de adevăr. Într-adevăr, acolo au fost careva probleme relaționale cu prietenii mei de acolo și da, le-am soluționat în timp, dar eu cred că este legat ceva și cu rezistența la schimbare, fiindcă este greu să faci o schimbare. Și pentru mine un munte este ceva dur, ceva care stă de mii de ani și dacă un pic îl mișcă ceva, nu știu, ploi torențiale sau vulcan, ceva dinăuntru sau ceva de genul ăsta, tot parcă ne creează careva schimbări de emoții. Și eu cred că emoțiile mele undeva sunt în legătură cu tendința de a percepe o altă imagine, de a schimba ceva în interiorul meu, de a ierta, să zic, atitudinea, să zic, neglijentă a prietenilor mei sau ceva de genul. Că a fost acolo mici probleme, dar cred că undeva ele au rămas în mintea mea ca o urmă în creier care din când în când se reactualizează și îmi revine în imaginea mea mentală. Mă gândesc în legătură cu asta și cred că experiența asta oricum a fost benefică pentru mine, că am văzut peisaje, am văzut locuri foarte frumoase care îmi stau în minte și mi s-au păstrat ca ceva divin, ca ceva foarte plăcut. Vă mulțumesc!
Thank you so much. That was a very beautiful feedback indeed. Just as a follow-up on that interpretation, if this is okay for you, what came to my mind when you were describing that was the the little rocks rolling down. And my question, a very brief question, is when you have the chance to let go, is that a bit hard for you to let go because you feel that you're dismantling in terms with dismantling? I mean, taking off a coat and then you're showing yourself more when you kind of let go. Is that something which is challenging for you to let go?
Da, eu cred că mi-aș fi dorit să-mi păstrez relația cu această familie, cu prietena mea și cu soțul ei. De-a lungul timpului, relația noastră a fost foarte importantă, doar că lumea se mai schimbă când în timp ceva văd altfel, nu știu, au alte valori și așa mai departe. Și totuși eu vreau să-mi păstrez atitudinea frumoasă față de ei și să-i păstrez în viața mea, dar cu toate acestea, sufletul meu luptă că este nemulțumit, poate că ceva n-a fost bine, ceva care nu a coincis cu așteptările mele atunci. Nu știu, cred că eu pot să schimb lucrurile spre bine. Eu am tendința să iert oamenii, să schimb lucrurile spre bine, să continui să descoper oameni buni în viața mea, așa că eu rămân deschisă spre schimbarea aceasta. Vă mulțumesc.
Thank you very much. I would like to stop it here and just ask another person whether there is another person who wants to share his or her experience here in the audience. Maybe it's a completely different experience with the rock formation and how it changed. If there is no one else who wants to share here in the audience, I suggest the following. I would assume that there were several of you who have images and experiences. I would like to use the next 15 minutes that you go together 2 and 2 or 3 people that's also working, and one of you who wants to share tells about what you experienced, and the others come with ideas and associations. As I said, there are as many interpretations of the truth. There are no wrong interpretations, and there does not have to be only one right interpretation. There can be many. But I would like you to go together 2 and 2 or 3 and 3. You decide that, and you can share your experiences, and the others come with ideas on what that eventually comes to experience. So I will keep my mouth shut now for the next 15 minutes, and you have the chance to talk by yourself. And then after 15 minutes, I will step in again and roll or round up this workshop. Okay, I would suggest to continue. I hope that this was inspiring for you. Before we go in for landing, I would like to give you the chance to come with questions. Maybe there was something now due to that exchange and reflection together with the others that you want to ask now in the audience. Maybe there were some, maybe you experienced something that you want to have further ideas on. So the floor is open now for further questions, impressions, whatever that you want to share with the whole group, please. Maybe everything was crystal clear, that's also possible, that you don't have any further questions. Yes, I don't think that there are further questions now. In this case, I would like to round up this exercise, and I would like to come to the last step. You can do it with open or with closed eyes. It only takes 2-3 minutes. I would like you to become silent for a moment again. And I would like to invite you to remember your experience with the mountain or the mountain range and how it transformed and changed. What has become apparent to you due to this experience? What significance does the experience in a symbolic sense have for you, both as a human being as well as a professional, like psychologists, psychiatrists, etc.? Are you becoming aware of new insights through this experience and the ideas that you receive from others on it? And how would you, based on these insights, formulate a next step of action? How do you want to put your insights into practice? How would you formulate such a step? And last but not least, you also remember briefly what ideas and associations you gave to the experiences of others now in the small groups. And whatever it was that you told them, take that back to you and ask yourself what these ideas and associations might have to do with you too. Maybe there too is something important that you become aware of by taking that back. And then we also finished with this step. If you had your eyes closed, you can open them again now. And my question to you is now, has anyone an idea what his or her experience with the mountain could mean in relation to you as a human being, in relation to your everyday life? If there was anyone who had an idea, could you just raise your hands if you had a new insight, if this was kind of meaningful to you? Please just raise your hands. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. There comes the microphone.
Cer scuze, sper nu v-am obosit cu comentarii. Eu am vizualizat încă un moment și mă gândesc că, deci deja creierul meu caută câteva comentarii ca și la testele proiective ale personalității. Undeva, nu știu, așa am conștientizat sau am înțeles pentru mine că dacă se rămâne muntele dur și nu se desprinde nimic de pe el, asta înseamnă că problema este mai dură, mai gravă, mai de mult timp. Dacă se desprind petricele încetișor, adică se mișcă ceva spre rezolvare și încet, încet se dezmembrează, să zic, se dezlipesc unele probleme, se împart în cele mai mici și asta este bine. Dacă adică este așa ca după vulcan sau după deci schimbări foarte tumultuoase, tulburătoare pentru psihic, atunci se desprinde muntele în bucăți mari și vin așa cu pericol spre persoană. Adică eu mă gândesc că dacă aș face acest exercițiu cu cineva din, nu știu, ca exercițiu aplicativ, cu cineva din pacienți, clienți sau cu cineva din studenți ca o aplicație practică, eu cred că am găsit mai multe comentarii. Am mai vizualizat cum se desface muntele în două și se creează acolo un spațiu unde este cu apă. Dacă este cu apă limpede, eu intuiesc că încet, încet este o soluție mai bună. Dacă ar fi apă murdară și așa mai departe, cu glod și cu, nu știu, lucruri urâte, înseamnă că acolo sunt fon emoțional mai grav. Deci ceva de genul ăsta. Dacă este cu verdeață, cu flori, deci sunt lucruri benefice, pozitive, anturaj pozitiv, viață plăcută a persoanei. Dacă este foarte șters de verdeață, poate să fie cam tristă viața, singuratică și așa mai departe. Iată, eu mă gândesc că ar fi un exercițiu perfect pentru, cel puțin pentru discuții, pentru vizualizare, pentru lărgirea spațiului de conștiință în legătură cu viața noastră și cu relațiile, cu funcționalitatea relațiilor dintre persoane. Iată, cam ceva de genul ăsta. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult și vă sunt recunoscătoare pentru experiența care ați împărtășit-o cu noi și sper să ne mai revedem la următoarele sesiuni sau congrese științifice. Mulțumesc!
Thank you very much. You brought up some important point here, and that is you were pointing towards the different interpretations or the different symbols that come up in such guided imageries. And here I would like to mention Erich Fromm, who spoke of the symbolic language as the most important language in the world, which means learning to become familiar with our own symbolic language, our dream language, so to speak, is one of the most important aspects that we can work with in our personal development, which means the more we get familiar with that, the easier we can learn to know ourselves and our human potentials, because this is in fact the purpose of the Trilogos method, that we get to know our human potentials on the one hand, and then that we also find ways how to further develop these potentials. And for that, the symbolic language or the language of these imageries are important. This is the gateway to this human potential development. If you are interested in learning more about the Trilogos method, I will have a presentation now afterwards at 11:15. But if you want to learn more about this methodology, if you want to do further exercises, then I can just say you the net site, which is trilogos.com. There, it's the English website, and if you want to learn more about this methodology, you also find several more guided imageries, audio exercises that you can do on your own or together with a group. I hope that you experience now that it can be very giving to work together with others with such imageries, because then you get different and more and unexpected ideas and interpretations of your images and experiences. So in that sense, I can only recommend you to take a look at that, at this website. I will come with a more theoretical description of the methodology afterwards in the presentation that I will do 11:15. I think that we will have a break now, if this is correct, Mihai. And after the break, we continue with the presentation. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So actually, in the program 10:45, 11:15, it's the coffee break. So we have now 15 minutes more, if needed.
Yes, if needed. If you don't have any further questions, then you can take a break. But if there are further questions from some of you, please just ask. As I said,
I think that the break is needed.
Okay, the break is needed. That's good. This is good. Then I see you all again at 11:15, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, what you already experienced in the morning in the workshop was such a guided imagery from the Trilogos method. What I will present you now in this workshop is how you can use the Trilogos method and guided imageries in order to develop ideas and impulses, inputs for your personal development on the one hand, but also ideas for developing further your professional practices. I present this keynote also on behalf of Professor Guro Hansen Helskog and then Associate Professor Camilla Angeltun and PhD candidate Shari with whom I did this experiment. Before I go into the subject, here is the conflict of interest form that I present now here again. So as you can see, I have nothing to disclose. And I do this presentation here in my role as a member of the Scientific Advisory Board of the Trilogos Foundation. And apart from that, there is not much more than that I can disclose. Okay, so the Trilogos method, already experienced that in the morning. I promised you then that I will describe in more theoretical terms what this methodology is about. So the Trilogos method in a nutshell, what I can say on that is that the methodology was developed by Linda Rötlisberger, a Swiss pedagogue. I shall greet you all from her. She was supposed to be with me now in Chisinau. We couldn't make it, as I said, but we do our best to join you next year. So this methodology was developed by Linda Rötlisberger for about 30 years ago. The aim is personality and consciousness development, which can also be called individuation. Some of you probably know that term from Hege Jung, the process of individuation. And the Trilogos method intends to offer a spiritual individuation process by means of a guided course consisting of 3 levels. And altogether, you have about 64 exercises in that course. What does Trilogos actually mean, or why is it called Trilogos? The threefold logos, so to speak, the threefold intelligence consisting of IQ, that means rational intelligence, then also EQ, which means emotional intelligence, and then SQ in terms of spiritual intelligence. And these 3 forms of intelligence form the so-called PsyQ, the human potential. And with that, the whole approach stands in the tradition of the human potential movement. You already experienced these 3 levels in the previous guided imagery. What I can say now is that specifically when it is about the spiritual intelligence, the whole Trilogos method goes much further than just offering guided imageries where you develop gifts and presents for yourself. In other guided imageries, you can perceive ideas and gifts for someone else in the group, like a sparring partner. So then it's not only about the intrapersonal level of consciousness where you work for you personally, or only for yourself, but you can also work for someone else, which is the interpersonal level that is addressed here. And then you also have the third level, the transpersonal level. Some of you are for sure familiar with transpersonal psychology, which is, for example, about past life regression therapy. So here you have these three different levels of consciousness that are addressed. As you know and experience, and as I mentioned, the basic techniques are guided. And for you who want to learn more, experience more, just take a look at the Trilogos website under trilogos.com, where you find more information on this course, In Touch with Your Inner Voice, where you have 3 volumes, altogether 64 exercises, audio exercises that you can do alone at home, or that you can also do together with others in a group. So this is a very brief description of the Trilogos method. I would like to describe you now what we did in this experiment, in this research and development project. My 3 colleagues and me, I have to say that we are all from the University of Southeastern Norway. 3 of us are working at the Department of Pedagogy, mainly in teacher education. Our PhD student that participated in this project is from the PhD program Culture Studies. She's also working with or researching on collective trauma. And so we're 3 or 4 scholars. She's also working with collective trauma. And the idea was that we would do 7 guided imageries from the course In Touch with the Inner Voice. We would have 1 imagery at a time, and then 1 bi-weekly meeting. That means a meeting every 2nd week on one of these exercises. The meetings were on Zoom, and in these meetings, each of us could share his or her experiences on that particular guided imagery. The others were coming with ideas, impulses, associations, what that could mean. And in that way, we could develop input for our personal growth, but also for our professional practices and development. So, what did the different participants actually say? At the end of these 7 guided imageries, each of us did a very short, brief statement or report on these 2 questions. How did you experience this imagery approach in general? And then, could these Trilogos sessions inspire you and support you in any way in your research and your academic work? So the second question was specifically about the professional output and the professional use of that kind of work. So what did Professor Guro Hansen Helskog say on the first question? Well, our individual images and experiences were closely linked to our professional and personal life. And I myself found my images rather boring and self-evident. However, when listening to the others and telling about my own images, I realized that they were not self-evident at all. So what she's principally saying, essentially saying, is that on the one hand, she could definitely see the relations and connections between her inner images from the exercises and her personal life and her professional life, so that they made not only sense, but they were meaningful in relation to her personal life, in relation to her profession as a professor in pedagogy. That was one point. The other point then was that she could suddenly realize, even though she thought, I know what these images mean, I know what these experiences want to tell me, so there is nothing new, that she, in the exchange with the others, suddenly realized, oh, there are new sides to it that I didn't discover. So there is, in fact, several layers of interpretation, and working with the group is very giving in that respect, because the others might have ideas that I would never have come up with. Now, what did she say on the second question? She answered yes, and I experienced that there was a connection between the sessions. I interpret as a development in my own relationship or attitude to my work. So what she meant with that was that she could see this kind of development from the first session to the second, third, and so on. So there was this kind of red thread through all the exercises. She could see a kind of development through all that. They were not separate individual events, these imageries or exercises, but she could see that they were kind of connected. And with that connectedness, they even gave more sense to her. So that was one aspect that she was addressing. The other one was that during this spring, I have been asking myself which way to go now when I have completed my current projects. The question, as well as the answer, were actualized again in the Trilogos sessions. I interpret the next step to by going deeper in what I already am doing. So basically, what this point is about is that she came with a specific question to the sessions. What should I do? What is my future in my work? And obviously she found orientation due to these Trilogos sessions. And what she wanted to do, or what she realized, was that, okay, I'm already on the right path. I just want to go deeper. I want to deepen what I already have developed. So I don't want to start something new. I want to continue and further develop what I already started, which is also a kind of direction or orientation for her. So this was her statement on these 7 exercises. The next one then is Associate Professor Camilla Angeltun. She answered on the first question. Several aspects were pivotal to me regarding the Trilogos method. Firstly, the sense of unity and openness within the group. Secondly, I received intriguing feedback and reflections on mental images that propelled me out of a rut into a new way of perceiving myself. This proved immensely valuable and uplifting. So basically what she was giving as a feedback here was that on the one hand, it was the group and how the group interacted, which she felt as a kind of unity and openness that she very much appreciated. The second point then was that she got very interesting feedback on her images that she developed and perceived and experienced in the exercises, which brought her out of a certain way of living and a certain perspective also in her profession. And as she said here, this was very much valuable because it brought her into a new direction that she actually was looking for, but didn't really know, okay, where to find that perspective. On the second question, then she came up with the following. To me, Trilogos is a method that allows us to explore, acquaint ourselves with, and gain confidence in the aspects of ourselves that function in a more wordless and intuitive manner. This aspect is overlooked in academia, where analysis, concepts, and models naturally take precedence. So what you see here before I go into the next point is that that wordless and intuitive approach is something that she appreciates very much, because in that way, in this intuitive way, you also can explore and acquaint yourself and gain confidence in different aspects of yourself. And this is not the same, or this is not the case in the same way with more analytical approaches. So the other point was that she brought up here, for many years, I have sensed a vague realization of a kind of disconnect between how we talk about situations and how we truly experience them. There's a missing piece, something that doesn't quite align. Trilogos addresses and activates both the rational and the intuitive. this serves as inspiration and support for me as both an academic and an individual. So for her, the missing link that she was looking for, or the missing piece, is the intuitive aspect. And with the Trilogos method, she could, in fact, start to develop and live that intuitive aspect, which she is missing in this situation where she says, a kind of disconnect between how we talk about situations and how we truly experience them. So this also has to do with authenticity that was becoming more and more important to her, that she could be more authentic due to this kind of practice and training. When we go over to the next one, it's the PhD candidate, Shari Bloom. She answered to the first question, a level of trust and understanding developed over the sessions, and we could see how personal symbols shifted and unfolded over time. So also she mentions that trust and the understanding that could develop within the group, or that developed due to the group dynamic. The next answer, the next point to the second question was then, the Trilogos sessions inspired me greatly. I felt closer to my colleagues and supported in a way that is not very traditional in work settings. I realized that the themes they were grappling with mirrored my own, and I understood that it was normal to have doubts about research direction and life path. So what Shari is basically saying here is that on the one hand, the approach that the Trilogos method offers is not very conventional. On the one hand, on the other hand, it was much appreciated by this PhD candidate because it showed her that having doubts about your own research and the direction you go with your own research, that is quite normal on the one hand. And the same goes for choosing the right life path. That was one insight. The other was then, as you can see here, the big message that emerged was that for me to thrive as a researcher, I must reintegrate aspects of my creative, intuitive, arts-based self. Right now, I'm actively brainstorming new methodologies, as well as willingness to invent new methodologies. So what she's basically saying here, and that's why she also stated that these sessions were greatly inspiring for her, is that she could all of a sudden reactivate her creative, intuitive, arts-based self, as she called that. And by combining the rational with the creative, she can now develop new methodologies necessary for her research projects. So here you can see that it's not only about, or this experiment was not only about finding ideas and impulses for your personal development, for your personal growth, but that the sessions also made it possible to develop new research methodologies, to develop research projects further. And this was a kind of new insight here, that the methodology is not only for your personal growth, also it's a very important aspect, and this is also what is said here, that it was very giving for everyone personally, but that there were, in addition, also impulses and ideas to develop professional practices and research projects further. I myself had also some statements here, and as you probably can imagine, I have several years of experiences with these exercises, but they're still as giving to me and enlightening as on the first day. And in general terms, these sessions make me calm down, give me an attitude of trust, hope, and courage. And it has to be said that regular training helps me to stay in such an attitude. So if I don't train regularly, I might fall out of that attitude. And with regular training, I might regain that attitude. It's basically the same as with physical training too. If you don't train regularly, you're getting out of shape. And then as an answer on the second question, I said, yes, these Trilogos sessions clearly did inspire and support me with regards to my academic work. there were several imageries which I read as an invitation to revitalize my creativity in my work. Using my intuition and my creative mind actively in what I do became quite prominent in these exercises. So in short, what became apparent and important for me, and this was also the case for the others, was that my own creativity and intuition became a resource for my professional work. In addition to the more rational activities that we normally do as researchers at our department or as a lecturer, because as several of you know, in academia, the analytical, rational approach is quite prominent, and creativity, even though, and as well as intuition, even though it is often used, it is not as often accepted or acknowledged. But here it came forward that the creative and the intuitive can be a major resource for the development of research and academia in general. So when I go now over to summarize all these aspects, yes, and this is also what I have to mention. Furthermore, it appeared to me that spirituality can be brought back into academia through creativity, because this is a point that is often discussed. I also discussed it with my colleagues. How can you bring back spirituality into academia, which was once a very important aspect within, you could say, science or academia? If you go back to the old schools of philosophy, then you have Pierre Hadot with his book Spiritual Exercises. The book is called Philosophy as a Way of Life, Spiritual Exercises from Socrates to Foucault. And there you see that spirituality was once the key dimension of academia. And that completely changed after the Middle Ages, where the rational and the analytical came into the center and into the focus. And now we're discussing how can we bring back spirituality into academia. And for us in this experiment, it appeared that it's through creativity, by learning to live creativity. For example, by means of the Trilogos method, you can bring back spirituality in a giving way, which means it's not about discussing who's right or wrong in terms of what is the right denomination, but rather creativity, or rather spirituality in terms of creativity and the creative force that we all have and that we all can access and harness for our personal life, but also for our creative work in our professions. So if we summarize now, what are common themes in all these statements? First of all, reflective practice, which means that we all engaged in profound introspection, fostering collaborative reflection and dialogue. These sessions and this experiment showed that we were all doing a kind of reflective practice. The other common theme then was embracing intuition. The scholars underscored the vital role of intuition in driving innovative ideas and personal insights. So as it was mentioned in the statements already, you could see that using our own intuition in order to develop new ideas, innovative ideas, was very vital and very important. The next point then was cultivating creativity. The scholars described how the imagery exercises ignited creativity within their academic endeavors, leading them to actively apply their creative thinking to their work, which means it was about what we learned due to the imageries of the Trilogos method was how can we use our creativity, how can we activate our creativity on the one hand, and then how can we use it in order to develop ideas for our personal development and our work. And this is what we called cultivating creativity. The last point then was the integration of spirituality. exploring the intuitive spiritual aspects of our being allowed to us to tap into a deeper source of inspiration, relevant for both our personal as well as our professional life, so to speak. So the integration of spirituality turned out to be important and very giving for us as scholars too, not only personally, but for us as scholars too. So when we now take a look at these 4 common themes and ask what can we take away from this experiment, which went over 14 weeks, what can we take with us? What are the key takeaways? On the one hand, innovation by intuition, which means that we recognize that intuition played a pivotal role in generating novel ideas and fresh perspective. In order to get new perspectives, new ideas, we used our intuition actively. The next was then personal growth, which means the imagery spurred deep self-reflection. And with that, we could unearth latent qualities crucial for our development as individuals and researchers. The next key takeaway is creativity as a pathway. Creativity emerged as a pathway to deeper understanding, encouraging the scholars to leverage creative thinking in their academic work. So it's not only critical thinking, rational thinking, but also creative thinking and perceiving. And then trust and openness. The process cultivated an atmosphere of trust and openness, which in turn nurtured a collective sense of growth and understanding. As I mentioned that before, working in that group, the group dynamic made us having more trust in each other. And with that, when you have trust in each other, you can also be more open. So this is what was also fostered in this group that we had. And last point, application in research. Some scholars discovered that the insights from the exercises equipped them with valuable approaches to address work-related challenges. So these 6 points was what we could take away from this small experiment. As I mentioned before, these were only 7 imageries. And the whole course called In Touch with Your Inner Voice consists of 64 exercises, which means you could go much more in depth if you would do more of these exercises. We're in fact starting a new round with different exercises where we not only work for ourselves, but where we also work for others in the group. We will start with that round with the next 7 exercises now in November. And we are looking forward what we will discover in terms of new takeaways and new insights and so on. So why did I present all that? Why did I present that project here to you? Some of you might know the so-called Barland groups, where professionals, medical professionals or professionals from mental health sector are sharing their experiences as professionals and getting input from others on what these experiences can mean. Often in the Barland groups, you have an experience of discrepancy, to call it like that, something that you don't yet understand, and you invite the group to help you. How can you interpret what you experienced as a professional in your health sector? In a quite similar way as these Barland groups, you can see these Trilogos sessions or these Trilogos groups that we had here. Because our question was not what can my professional experiences mean? Our question was, how can we develop further as both individuals as well as professionals within academia? How can we develop our research work further? And for that, we did that project. It's not necessarily a research project in itself. Rather, this experiment is a development project. It's about our personal and professional development. And I presented that here to you because some of you might also want to have a fresh impetus on your professional work as well as on your personal development. And here you might get a perspective how that could work. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for attending and listening to this presentation. you can see here the net site of the website of Trilogos, where you find further exercises, audio exercises, and so on. If you're interested to participate in such an experiment, in such a group, a Trilogos group, an exchange group, where you do 7 imageries and then exchange with others, I can offer you to scan this QR code. With that, you come to a form where you can fill in your name and email address. There is place for 8 people, where I would do the same exercises that I did with this group that I was just presenting to you. So there are 8 seats available, so to speak. You would get a link every second week to an exercise, an audio exercise that you can do at home. And then we have a bi-weekly meeting on that particular exercise on Zoom, where we can exchange our experiences and ideas. So if you're interested in joining such a group, then you can fill in your name and email address in this form. I would say, depending on how many people we are, I will send an email to all of you who registered in that form, and then we see when we start. But I would say that this will be about in the end of October, beginning of November. Okay, and with that, I'm actually finished with my presentation. The last 15 minutes is open for questions, discussion, and so on. So I will stop sharing now. And if there are any questions from the audience, now is the time for it.
Thank you, Michael, for your lecture. So we have 15 minutes to talk, to discuss, if anyone.
I have a question. Can you, if there are any criteria into creating the group?
Are there any criteria to
creating the group? Because the sessions, as I understood, sometimes are in group, so people are open to each other. Whether there are any criteria to create a group? Is it heterogeneous, about age, maybe? I don't know. Field.
Thank you very much for that question. There are in principle no limitations who participate. What we did here in that particular group was, of course, that we were colleagues from more or less the same field, from humanity. And that was given, but it would also work if you are people from different fields, then you could also create such a group. And if you do it not in terms of professional development, but personal development, then in principle, everyone or anyone can participate. It can even be when it's about the professional development, like developing not only yourself, but your professional practices further. Then it can even be more giving if you're coming from different fields, if it's like an interdisciplinary group. But it also works if you come all from the same field. I don't know whether it's an answer for you or question.
Is it possible to work in this kind of way with patients?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, I don't know in which field you are working, but it's absolutely possible. Like you can do such sessions in terms of a group therapy, for example, in terms of psychotherapy. But of course, it always also depends on the diagnosis. If a person has a diagnosis or if several of the participants have a diagnosis, you as the professional, as the therapist or the psychiatrist, of course, to decide whether this is appropriate.
I'm asking because, as far as I remember, if the patient is psychotic or is functioning, borderline functioning, so it's closer to a personality disorder, some sort of that, it will be a lot of information, emotional and unstable. So I'm wondering whether that can harm actually the patient.
I would not recommend to do it with borderline patients or with people in psychosis. Absolutely not.
Yes, we have limitations still and criteria for this kind of exercises.
Yes, This is what I would say. I'm not a psychiatrist myself. I'm a philosopher. That's my background, basically. So this is, of course, up to you to decide for whom this is working. So, and yes, there are limitations. There are limitations. And I would even say that you know your patients best, and then if you want to do such exercises with your patients, it's you who are responsible to decide whether this can work or not. But it's definitely not to blindly choose such an exercise and then do it with your patients. Absolutely not.
I would definitely do such things in my fantasy only with people that I really trust, because opening your boundaries so much with someone that you don't trust can harm you, and the other one maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I fully agree with what you said.
Michael, felicitări, foarte interesant atelier. Ascultând cu atenție ceea ce ați prezentat, pare să fie o combinație ceea ce prezentați ca tehnica Trilogos, pare să fie o îmbinare a unei tehnici din terapie ericksoniană cu ceea ce, dacă trecem de la individual, ceea ce se face în terapie ericksoniană la grup, pare să fie similar cu sau o tehnică îmbunătățită care poate că ar fi utilă și pacienților psihotici care și-au revenit din psihoză, aceiași pacienți cu schizofrenie, de genul tehnicii elaborate de Seikula în Finlanda, tehnica dialogului deschis. Ce credeți despre asta?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's a very good question. First of all, I would like to say yes, definitely. It's the technique of guided imagery. It's quite well known, and you find different approaches and variations of that. Absolutely. As I said in the beginning, the Trilogos method is maybe different in that respect, that it also addresses the spiritual dimension in terms of the three levels of consciousness: the intrapersonal, interpersonal, transpersonal. When it comes to working with patients that recovered from psychosis, and whether this could be a possibility to work with them, as I said previously, it depends. This depends, or this can vary from case to case. And it's you as the psychiatrist or the psychotherapist deciding, is that appropriate or not? And as with any other treatment, you would first take a closer look at what is the intervention or the treatment basically about, and is that appropriate? If the person has fully recovered from psychosis, and if you say, well, this can be helpful for a further development of that patients, then it's of course a possibility. But I simply can't give any general answers on that question, what would work and what won't work. That would be I don't think that this would be appropriate, as you can understand.
Da, sigur. Mulțumesc și încă o dată felicitări.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions, comments? No. So thank you again, Michael, for spending this morning with us. And I hope that in the next years, maybe we'll manage to meet in person finally.
I hope so too. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for joining. I also hope that I can all see you in person next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye. And before moving to the next session, there is no break now. I just want to say some words because I have a 10 hours road in front of me. I need to be home by tonight. I really want to say a big thank you to all of you for your involvement.